Wednesday, December 23, 2020, and third edition of the News on DBS TV for this week. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. 89 of them newly elected Pioneer Regional Councillors assembled at Salle des Fêtes d'Aqua as per the law governing regional elections in Cameroon to elect the littoral president of the Regional Assembly and members of the Bureau on Tuesday, December 22, 2020. From Nkam, Mungo, Sanaga Maritime and Vuri divisions, these delegates are conscious of the fact that posterity would live to remember them, and this by itself measures the weight of the exercise. The arrival of the Littoral Regional Governor and the representative of the CPDM Central Committee, Laurent Serge Etundingoa, marked the beginning of the exercise. Governor Samuel Ivaha Diboa presented the stakes of the election and reminded them of the expectations of the Cameroonian people. Taking into consideration all of these, 84 delegates behind closed doors gave their vote for Banlock Polycarp as the Pioneer Regional President, who already has a working plan.
I'm saying every subdivision officer will travel from his office to the divisional office through a macadam highway road built by the region.
Other members of the Bureau included Madame Mpudi Ngole Eveline as first Vice President, His Majesty Mbappe Bwanga Paul Milord, Second Vice President, while Wandi Thomas and His Majesty Etotoke Albert as secretaries. Ekindi Camille and Madame Ndedi Rebecca were elected quaestors, all of them elected by popular acclamation. 4 commissions were formed, including the Commission for Administrative Affairs and Internal Rules, Commission for Health and Education, Commission for Finance and Infrastructure, and the Commission for Environment, Housing and Territorial Management. The names of the Regional Council Bureau members in the Northwest region of Cameroon are also known. The 70 regional councillors and 20 traditional rulers voted on December 22, 2020 and elected those to lead the ever-first Regional Council and carry the task of decentralization and special status for the Northwest region, as confirmed by Governor Adolphe Lele Lafrique, who oversaw the occasion.
The commitment of the regional councillor that have voted unanimously the first ever regional council bureau of the region of special status of the Northwest region. Thank you very much.
Angwafo Fru got unanimously elected Pioneer President of the Regional Council. The election exercise took place at the Regional Council Conference Hall at Upstation Bamenda 1, chaired by the oldest member of the House, 95-year-old Fon Agwafo of Mankom. He was assisted by the youngest member, Windy Muma Lima. At the end, they voted the full list of executive members to occupy the post of responsibilities at the Regional Council for decentralization and implementation of the special status given to the Northwest region. While the president is Professor Angwafo Fru from Mezam, the Vice President is Fon Kevin Tevi of Ngoketunja, Commissioner for Economic Development, Gejung Anwuti of Mizam, Commissioner for Health and Social Development, Dr. Mrs. Seka Fondufe Lydia from Bui, and Quaestor Wanjum Jude Nsom of Boyo, amongst a host of others, all with a specific mission.
The House of Chiefs is expected to deliberate on chieftaincy, its cultural facets, precepts, tenets adapted to our changing times.
The 20 chiefs of the Constitution will form the House of Chiefs for the Northwest region with particular tasks to accomplish.
And when we look into the attributes of the House of Chiefs, we will deal with traditional chieftaincy matters. We will deal with issues relating to the culture of the Northwest. And by so doing, culture is the base. Traditional chieftaincy is the base. So we are going to touch base with not just the funds themselves, but if we are touching base with the funds, we are touching base with the grassroots, because the funds live with the grassroots population. So you can be rest assured that we will do our best to be able to bring peace to the Northwest region.
Out of Cameroon, rebels in the Central African Republic have seized Bambari, the country's fourth largest city, 5 days before nationwide elections, according to the local mayor, government and UN sources. The attack was carried out on Tuesday, December 22, followed by an escalation of violence ahead of the presidential and parliamentary elections on December 27. President Touadera on Monday said the vote would go ahead as planned, urging people to ignore reports of a rebel advance allegedly planned by former President Francois Bozizé, whose presidential bid was rejected by the country's Constitutional Court, citing UN sanctions. Fighting broke out between armed groups and Central African Republic forces on Tuesday on a major road in the west of the country, linking Bangui to Cameroon, according to senior UN officials. The capture of Bambari will further complicate matters for the Central African Republic's weak government, which has already been struggling to govern. Bambari, located 380 kilometers northeast of the capital Bangui, is one of the most vast areas of the country that remains in the hands of militias and rebel groups. An investigatory committee for the United Nations is accusing the Malian army of committing war crimes in a 338-page report detailing violence in the country in recent years. The allegations were made by the International Commission of Inquiry for Mali, a 3-member panel which investigated violence that unfolded over 6 years from 2012 to 2018. The probe, whose conclusions have been sent to the Security Council but have not yet been made public, recommends setting up a court that specializes in prosecuting international crimes. In 2012, the Malian military seized power in a coup supposed to halt the army's defeat of the independence and jihadist rebels in the north, plunging the country into an ongoing crisis. In 2012 to 2013, the security and defense forces were guilty of assassinations, targeting particularly members of the Tuareg and Arab communities, associating them with independent rebels and jihadist groups. France, the former colonial power, launched a military operation in 2013. The fighters then regrouped and expanded their campaign into central Mali, inflaming a region with ethnic rivalries before advancing into neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. All this led to thousands of deaths and hundreds of thousands fled their homes. The top judge of the court responsible for judging the former Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir for his role in a coup d'etat which brought him to power in 1989 announced his resignation on Tuesday for health reasons. Judge Essam Mohamed Ibrahim said he suffered from tension and the doctor has advised him not to continue work. The unprecedented trial in the Arab nation, where the perpetrator of a successful coup has never been tried in recent history, began on July 21. 76-year-old Omar al-Bashir, along with 27 other defendants, including soldiers and civilians, faced the death penalty for overthrowing the democratically elected government of Prime Minister Sadegh Al-Mahdi 31 years ago. The 191 lawyers for the defendants made several procedural arguments to postpone the trial, including the fact that the courtroom was not large enough to respect social distancing barrier measures. The next hearing has been set for January 5, 2021. The Moroccan government on Monday, December 21, announced a nationwide nighttime curfew and new coronavirus restrictive measures. The curfew is to be effective from Wednesday, December 23, and would run for a period of 3 weeks to curb the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. Shops, malls, and restaurants would have to close at 8 p.m. across the country, but restaurants in the big cities of Casablanca, Marrakech, Agadir and Tangier would have to close completely for a period of 3 weeks. Moroccan authorities say the night curfew would be from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. except in exceptional cases. The North African country has ordered vaccines from China's Sinopharm and the UK's AstraZeneca, as it has lately been detecting more than 2,000 coronavirus cases per day. Morocco, which has registered more than 400,000 COVID-19 infections, including 7,000 deaths, recently lifted a 3-month lockdown in June, but maintained restrictive measures in some cities with higher infection rates. President Donald Trump has rejected a massive COVID-19 economic relief package passed by Congress and threatened not to sign a $900 billion relief, saying it is a disgrace in an act of political brinkmanship. He made the announcement in a pre-recorded address on Tuesday, December 22, and posted it on his Twitter account. This comes a day after his Republicans and the Democrats finally agreed overwhelmingly to a $900 billion bill meant to throw a lifeline to business and people struggling to keep heads above water. Taking a back turn into his nationalist America First brand, Trump also castigated measures added onto the bill during complex negotiations that would provide funding for projects benefiting U.S. partners abroad and other non-COVID related items like the environment. From the US, France and Britain reopened cross-border travel on Wednesday, December 23, after a snap 48-hour ban to curb the spread of a new wave of coronavirus threatening UK supply chains. On Tuesday, dramatic images showed hundreds of lorries backed up in Dover, with British Prime Minister Boris Johnson facing growing pressure to resolve the deadlock even as the post-Brexit trade deal deadline loomed. UK Transport Secretary Grant Shapps announced Britain and France had settled on a protocol that would see the French border reopened to those travelling for urgent reasons, provided they have a certified negative COVID test. However, he urged lorry drivers not to head to the southern country of Kent in expectations of boarding a ferry or a train. Despite a breakthrough in talks, congestion around the key southern part of Dover remains unlikely to recede in a short term. Despite the fresh agreement, which will be reviewed on December 31, it is unclear when traffic will begin moving again. Following 4 unsuccessful parliamentary elections in less than 2 years in Israel, the fractious coalition government collapsed on Tuesday, December 22. This was triggered by parliament's failure to meet the deadline of the annual budget to be passed which is one of many basic acts of lawmaking that have gone undone since the right-wing and centrist parties reached an unwidely power-sharing agreement in the spring. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also faced public anger over his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, and while he is engaged in a corruption trial, the first against an Israeli prime minister. The bill to extend the deadline failed by 2 votes. 3 blue and white members and 1 from Likud defied the leaders to vote against it. Another Likud member didn't show up for the vote. Note that the Israeli nation has been plunged back into political crisis with little sign that an end to the long stalemate in its sight. The World Football Governing Body FIFA has filed a criminal complaint with Zurich cantonal prosecutor claiming evidence of criminal mismanagement of a museum project set up by former President Sepp Blatter. FIFA said its complaint identified the direct involvement of former FIFA President Blatter together with other persons in the agreement made for the museum, which is in central Zurich. The FIFA World Football Museum opened in 2016 after 115 million euros was spent refurnishing the 1970s office building to also include 34 rental apartments. It was meant to open around May 2015 when Blatter won a 5th presidential election, but was delayed until after he left office amid pressure from American and Swiss investigations of international football officials. Blatter committed FIFA to a rental contract with the building's owner, insurance firm Swiss Life, that requires paying 295 million euros through 2045 at above market rate, football's world body said. FIFA said its criminal complaint following an external audit of the project was delivered by hand to Canton State of Prosecutors in Zurich. That brings us to the end of the news. Thanks for your attention. We will be yours again tomorrow, God willing. Have a Merry Christmas in advance.